And good morning and welcome to Saturday Sesh. My name is Trey Reckling with the Academy of Cannabis Science. And if you're here, that means you're family and friends, student or former student, part of our community. So thanks for being here. We know there's a lot of work to do in this community. And that's why we want to give you an opportunity to come together from your home on a Saturday. Thanks for being here in the middle of your Saturday and learning more about what's going on in the cannabis industry. What are the trends? What are the concerns? What can you do to be prepared or to be better at your job or what you're doing in your community, your community? And so we are pleased and honored to welcome Andrew DeAngelo today of Last Prisoner Project, but his resume is much longer than that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Andrew's joining us for a first. This is our introduction to him and him to us, I believe. And so, but first we want to make sure we know who we're speaking to today. And so we'd like to go around the room and give folks an opportunity to introduce themselves. And Kenji, I'm going to start with you. I thought I saw you downtown at the protest yesterday with the mask. It was kind of hard to tell. Some dude thought I was after him. I was like, hey. He had no idea who I was. I know that's your neighborhood, though. So good to have you.
Yeah, absolutely, Trey. Thanks. Yeah, my name is Kenji Hobbs. I work for Dockside Cannabis out of the Soto store. I've always been interested in equitable treatment in the cannabis industry, and I'm glad this conversation has been accelerated. And I'm interested, and I want to know what kind of work I can do personally to help out. I'm Japanese American, but I think I speak from a place of real privilege in terms of the opportunities that I've been given in my life. So that's just a little bit about me. I'm really excited about our conversation today.
Cool. Thanks for being here. Rico, welcome back. Tell us a little bit about yourself. And you are on mute until you hit it.
Yep, there I am. I'm still trying to figure out the video, but I'll just get moving along. My name is Rico Cortez. I'm actually here in Tacoma. I'm just, as I was telling Trey, I was here with a heavy heart because it is interesting set of times that we live in inequities in all professions, in all levels, in all classes. And it's just great that we can come together today and discuss it, even how it affects this industry that we're all looking to dive deeper in. And I think we have to dive deeper in life. So just glad to be here.
Thanks for being here, sir. And welcome back. Kristin, good morning. How are you doing? Tell us a little bit about you.
Good morning. I am Kristin Baldwin. I'm the executive director of the Cannabis Alliance, which is a Washington State trade association, and we're the largest trade association in the state of Washington, and we are very committed to social equity. So we're kind of excited to hear more about what is going on outside of our own little borders.
Excellent. Thank you. Annie, how are you?
You're doing pretty well. How are you, Trey?
Doing well.
Good. I'm Annie Butler. I work in higher education and human resources. I'm a marijuana enthusiast, obviously. And I was disheartened to know during the protest that someone tried to loot the shop that I frequent, the Reef. I read that on the Capitol Hill News, and so I don't know, to the extent or whatnot, but so. But that's definitely not what this is all about. This is about fair and equal treatment and stopping violence, and that definitely needs to happen. So I do support that. You don't support the few that are trying to take advantage for themselves. But anyway, enough about that.
No,
I'm happy to be here this morning.
Can't let people hijack a movement, for sure. And there's a lot of goodwill and good energy right now, for sure.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Thanks for being here. Kaylin, good morning.
Good morning. My name is Caitlin Ryan, and I'm the president of the Cannabis Alliance. I work with Kristin, and the Alliance is dedicated to the advancement of a vital, ethical, and sustainable cannabis industry. And I'm here today because we're really looking very closely at all of our policy initiatives and making sure we're doing our very best to put this at the forefront right now.
And full disclosure, Cannabis Alliance is my family as well, and fantastic organization. Whether you're part of Washington State or not, they encourage you to join their, right now all the meetings are live, and you can find them on thecannabisalliance.us, and I bet Kristin will put up a link for us at some point. But right now, those meetings are virtual and free to access. So if you're outside of Washington, take the opportunity to get to know what's going on in a neighborhood outside of yours. There's always transferable information.
Yeah, and if I can, also, we've got a Tuesday night happy hour that for the moment we're dedicating to the conversation of police violence and social equity. And they're at 4 o'clock on Tuesdays. If you go to our website under the events section, it's an open link and anybody can join at any time.
Great,
So,
thank you very much.
yeah.
Angela, how are you? Good morning. Afternoon.
Good morning. Afternoon. Only by 7 minutes. I'm doing good. My name's Angela Holm. I'm here just to learn more and absorb it all in. My main goal really is to be able to dispel myths that I've even believed my whole life about cannabis and use and those types of things. So I just really want to learn more.
Excellent. Well, thanks for being here. And Lisa, we're going to ask you to introduce yourself as well. And Lisa, if you got me, she might be away or she might be muted, but Lisa will certainly catch you on the backside once we do Q&A around the room. So wanted to make sure to, oh, here, we got some more folks coming in. Just let's catch them real quick. All right, good morning, Lisa. If you'd like to introduce yourself, we're just going around the room. All right, Maria, good morning. How are you?
Whoops, very good, and so sorry to be late.
That's all right. Why don't you tell us, we're just going around the room so we know who's on the chat and who we're sitting around the circle with.
Okay, well, I am the owner of MJHR Strategic Solutions. I'm an HR consultant for the cannabis business. I also work for the College of the Desert, and we are currently looking at embracing some online classes for cannabis, people who want to both learn about cannabis and who want to be in the industry. So I'm helping with that project.
Fantastic. We're glad to have you here today.
Thank you.
So now we want to get to our special guest, Andrew DeAngelo. Andrew, thanks for joining us today. Without much background on us, we're kind of, like I said, we're new friends, but just briefly, Andrew led the design and the development of the gold standard cannabis retail by innovating many firsts for the industry. And this is going to be a brief introduction. I'm going to ask him to cover us more broadly, but not only including among his firsts are introducing CBD medicines to heal severely epileptic children, as documented in Discovery Channel's Weed Wars. And let me get pull Andrew up there. Implementing the first lab testing program in the history of cannabis dispensing, creating child-resistant packaging for edibles, standardizing inventory tracking, initiating senior outreach, successfully preventing the federal government from seizing Harborside in forfeiture against actions against the company in 2012, which made national news and was a huge standoff. And I'm sure you're glad to be past that point in your life. Andrew, that's just a very brief introduction. Help me out there.
Sure. Well, good to be with all of you today. Most of you may be more familiar with my older brother, Steve DeAngelo, and Steve's about 10 years older than me. We're both middle-aged guys, and we've been doing this a long time. So before we could open Harborside, we had to change the laws to make it possible to open Harborside. So I started off as a legacy cannabis trader and also an activist to change laws. And I was fortunate enough as a very young man coming out of college to meet and work with Dennis Perone and Brownie Mary and that whole team that legalized medical in San Francisco first in 1992 in the middle of the AIDS crisis there. So, and ever since then, I've been working on first changing the laws, and now we're trying to fix them. I'm glad to hear that we have some trade association leaders on the call today. I also co-founded the California Cannabis Industry Association, spent 8 years on the board and leading that organization. I did leave in January to make room for new leaders. And so I can appreciate how hard I know that we're all working to fix our frameworks and tax structures and access into the legal market and trying to absorb the legacy markets and create one market where all of us can participate in that market and thrive together and hopefully bring cannabis values and all the lessons we've learned from the plant to a much wider society and mainstream society. So that's what my career has been all about. Now I'm not on the Harborside day-to-day team anymore. I'm not on the CCIA. I consult and advise companies and trade associations and activist groups. And I'm really happy to be with you all today. The Last Prisoner Project is my latest nonprofit. I guess that's probably the thing I'm most passionate about right now. We started that about a year ago. We've been supporting cannabis prisoners our whole career, you know, from bailing our friends out who got busted and making sure people had good legal representation so that they had a fighting chance in the pay-to-play justice system that we have. And we just got tired of doing that, right? So now with legalization and Harborside sort of evolving to be a little bit more of a grown-up company, we have a little bit more bandwidth to focus on getting people out of prison. And we feel it's really shameful that we have a billion-dollar industry, global industry now, people that are selling, trading, growing, transporting, manufacturing far more volumes of cannabis than all these folks are in prison for right now. It strikes us as perversely wrong. And so we wanted to do something about it. And lastprisonerproject.org is our website. Easy to plug in, easy to donate, easy to volunteer, easy to get your cannabis company or brand involved. We have a plethora of programs, small, large, and medium, for people to participate in. And there's a whole bunch of other social justice groups that cannabis people are involved in. We're not the only ones. And I think now's the moment for all of us to bolt on to those organizations. I would encourage people to find one that already exists that you like, instead of starting your own, because we have a lot of fragmentation. It's a problem, and we all go after the same donors, and then it becomes very difficult for us to consolidate our power, what little we have. So that's what I'm up to lately. And, you know, unfortunately, that work becomes more relevant day by day here.
Absolutely. And I believe any of our students who are on the call with us today are very aware of at least the numbers of the impact of the drug war. You know, I don't think people understand the real impact until somebody they know or love, somebody in their family has been in prison. But just according to your own website, Last Prisoner Project, and backed up by numbers from the ACLU, people who aren't fully aware, 15.7 million people have been arrested for cannabis offenses, quote unquote offenses, over the past decade. $47 billion spent on the drug war. At the same time, almost $10.5 billion in sales, and that was just as of 2018. So like you talk about the hypocrisy of the moment where, you know, state coffers will not do without their percentage of every legal sale. And at the same time, you know, they're spending millions and millions of dollars, not just to continue to arrest people, but to keep them in prison. So what was it that began your contact with social justice? I heard an interview that it was real personal for you, your first interaction with social justice in the cannabis industry.
Well, I was 9 years old when my parents took me to visit my brother Steve, who was serving his first sentence for a cannabis crime. This was 1976. And it was a very interesting experience because I was 9 years old, and the jail that he was locked up in, my brother was only 18 or 19. So it was one of these situations where he got caught with a little bit of weed at an airport, Dulles Airport, outside of Washington, D.C., there in the suburbs of Virginia. Virginia is not a place you wanted to get caught with cannabis in 1976 or ever, really. So it was not good, even for Steve, who has white skin, and my dad at that time worked for the federal government and had some quote unquote connections. Still had to do 5 months in jail because, you know, they get real mad at you in those days if you had a little weed. So, and the jail had a rule that you had to be 10 years old. Did I lose you guys?
No, we got you.
Okay. All right, great. The jail had a rule you had to be 10. I was only 9. I was driving. It was like a 5-hour drive out there. My parents were coaching me the whole time out there on how to lie appropriately after a lifetime of encouraging me never to lie. So we were in this really weird situation where I had to lie, and then I had to go visit my brother in jail, and then there was these sheriffs, and they were lecturing me. You can't visit people together. You had to go one at a time. So my parents went and visited my brother, and I was in a room alone with the sheriff, and the sheriff began to lecture me about cannabis and my brother not respecting the laws, and you have to respect the laws, and this is what happens, and don't let this happen to you, kind of thing. And I was offended, even as a 9-year-old child. I was offended by that because I knew my brother was good, not bad. So it was. I didn't know, when you're 9 years old, you're just going through the motions. You're just trying to survive this experience called your childhood, and you don't have any control over anything, and you don't really have any awareness of, you know, what's happening to you politically in that moment. But it was a political activation for me. It was a seed that was planted deep within me. And it really started, looking back on it now as a 52-year-old man, looking back on it now, it was a big moment in my cannabis journey and my evolution. So, and then just a few years after that, when I was in junior high school, there was a young man named Terrence Johnson who was arrested by the police. He was only 16. He was the same age as me, maybe a year or two older than me. And he got arrested by the police, and he got taken down to the police station, and he got beaten severely. And he managed to get a gun from one of the cops, and he killed the cop that was torturing him. And he had never done anything violent in his life. He had no history. He was 16 years old. He looked, and I went to school with some of his cousins because we lived nearby. We were lived in next, you know, in a school right nearby. And it was heavy. It was a heavy moment, okay? It was heavy for the students. It was heavy for the school. There was demonstrations. This was a long time ago, guys. This was 1980. So this has been with our country a long, long time. Of course, it goes far, far beyond that, as everyone knows. And it's been part of my life a long, long time. And so, yes, it is personal. Mm-hmm. Me and my brother have been locked up and arrested, and pretty severely, for cannabis. So we know what that feels like. But we're not in prison for the rest of our lives right now, partly, if not mainly, because of the color of our skin and the fact that we do come from a more privileged background, or else we would be. So, you know, so by the grace of God, you know.
And I want to point out some of those hard and sad statistics that don't have to be like they are, that although Black people make up about 13% of the population in the U.S., 35% of those arrested for drug possession are Black, 55% of those convicted for drug possession are Black, and 74% of those imprisoned for drug possession are Black people. And
that says it all. I mean,
a lot of people might be late to the game on this information, and millions of people seem to be just kind of waking up, or at least willing to open their eyes and their hearts more than they have in the past. And no harm on anybody that comes late. I think everybody, illumination happens at different times, at different reasons, but now is a moment that a lot of people are asking themselves, hey, well, now that I'm more aware, what can I do? What action can I take? And so that's why we think it was particularly important that, we talked about you coming on before the recent news, but could you help us understand a little bit
Hey,
about
Trey,
how?
before you go on, could those statistics were very important to me.
Yeah.
When you were reading those off at 55% conviction, 74%, was that for all drug-related charges or only for cannabis?
No, that was for drug-related charges, and you can go to those are from the ACLU, and I should have quoted my stats, but those are from aclu.org. So they
Okay,
do have more specific information about cannabis, as does Last Prisoner Project, if you want to follow up on my stats and dig deeper.
great. Thank
Um,
you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Andrew, if you could help us understand a little bit about how the Last Prisoner Project has already helped to affect real change in the space.
Yes, sure. I'll be happy to. This is instructive for students and anybody who wants to affect positive social change, especially social justice, because I spent a lot of time in my long career now spinning my wheels and not actually getting positive things done. Sometimes progressives have problems acting and developing enough consensus to act sometimes is often difficult for us. But Last Prisoner Project is trying to be a very practical organization. Our mission is narrow. It's not a big, we're not trying to solve every single progressive issue. Very simple. We want to get cannabis prisoners out of prison. We want to get records expunged. And then we want to reintegrate cannabis prisoners into society, help them once their records expunged. Hopefully we can train them and get them employment in the actual cannabis industry. That's the ultimate vision. So that we create a prison to prosperity pipeline rather than the other way around, right, which is the way it's been for people of color and poor people, just poor people. I mean, I read a letter from a young man in prison in Illinois today. He's white. He's doing 23 years for weed. He's poor, couldn't afford it. Terrible defense, terrible, just terrible. So that's just the three things we do, And so the way you get somebody out of prison who's already been convicted, who's exhausted all their appeals, is with clemency. Mm-hmm. Clemency is when a governor pardons somebody, basically, based on a recommendation, usually from a parole board or a prosecutor or a family that's well-connected that hires a whole bunch of legal help to create a clemency petition. There's something called a clemency petition, and the way the law works in theory is that there's a way for everybody, no matter how rich or poor you are, to access certain avenues of due process. And clemency is one of those avenues of due process. It's part of the due process tradition designed to help people who did not commit a crime be freed, so that we don't live like a monarchy or a dictatorship. So that's the idea behind it. Now, it isn't used very well, and it's abused terribly. But governors are generally risk-averse people. Mm-hmm. Some of you may remember Willie Horton, some of you may not. But when Michael Dukakis was running for president against George H.W. Bush, there was this famous campaign ad about a guy named Willie Horton, who was an African-American guy, and he got furloughed from prison on an early release program, and he did some horrific thing, and the George Bush used that against the guy who furloughed him, who was running against him, and was considered a turning point in the election. And ever since then, that tactic has been feared by politicians. So it's just amazing how efficacious that one thing has been to cause people to not grant clemency. So anyway, it's a really uphill battle. It costs millions of dollars to get these clemency petitions, thousands of legal hours for each one. We've got, I don't know, tens of thousands of them we have to do. So it's a daunting task, but that's one thing we do. The expungement's a little easier, especially in states that have legalized cannabis one way or another. Oftentimes those states, this is another thing LPP does, is we work with states that haven't legalized yet to make it easier for us to expunge records.
Mm-hmm.
Expungement, again, there's all these legal bureaucratic hurdles and constraints that have been built into the system. Okay, the system is inherently racist. So there's all these things in there that prevent people from accessing freedom. And expungement has all these barricades in it, and red tape that's really hard to get through. So we try to help people with that. We try to create laws that make it easier so those barriers aren't put in there in the first place, or they're removed for cannabis. So we try to do that, and then we advocate for that too. And then our constituents, when they get out of prison, we try to help them get an apartment or a job, train them. We had a really nice program with a multi-state operator called Harvest that was a training program for that right now Harvest has to pull back a little bit from that commitment. So we're looking for other companies to join that effort. But that is about mid six figures that we need to really get a great training program together. So somebody gets out, they immediately go into a training program, and then they get hired to be a gardener, a trimmer, a bud tender, a manager, not just a worker, a manager, a leader. And there's a path. Because the thing about the cannabis industry right now is, and I can tell you as an operator for 12, 13 years, we're looking for leaders. We're looking for great people. If you come in, you can come. There have been people who came and worked at Harborside as a bud tender and ended up being general manager of the whole kit and caboodle, because they just were great workers. They understood the vision, the mission. They internalized it. It became part of them, and boom, they became leaders for us. And it's so possible to do that right now. Oh my goodness, it is so possible to do that right now. So because the Schedule I status of cannabis is still preventing really, really, really big corporate entities from coming in, and all those professionals who work for those entities from coming in. So there's a real opportunity for people right now. So I hope everyone will take advantage of that too. But that's kind of the operating system of LPP.
And so that's amazing. So I know not only are you providing, like you said, as part of the legal defense, helping connect people with pro bono lawyers, the reentry work that you're doing, the prisoner prosperity program. I'm damn sorry to hear that you had some problem with your training. Ironically, we reached out, and we'll be talking to Mary next week about what we'd like to do to contribute from what we do and helping on that prisoner prosperity program. So we hope to be able to work more closely with you soon.
Yeah, it's a little bump in the road. Everybody right now, the big multi-state operators are just having a very, very hard time. Big cannabis companies, even, Harborside, even, we're all operating under these very constrained frameworks, as you all know, in Washington State. So, until we fix that, all of us are just going to hang on there, hang on for dear life.
And tell us about during this pandemic, during COVID, I know you all have done particular outreach for the safety of those prisoners who don't have a choice, but they kind of wait on the disease to come or the virus to come their way. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, the recent events have sort of moved that off the headlines, which it was hard for me to believe anything could, but certainly it did. Yeah, prisons and prisoners are particularly vulnerable for COVID. The largest rates of infection are happening in American prisons right now. Maybe Brazil just beat us to the punch, or Russia, but wherever it is happening, the prisons are where it's happening the worst. And we have this idea of punishment that extends to going way beyond whatever the particular crime might be, that somebody is trying to just pay their debt to society. I mean, they're in jail, you're in prison, you're there, your freedom is taken away from you. It's an extreme thing to do to somebody in a free and open society, take their freedom away. It should not be done lightly. It should be done really hard. And the freedom and the place you put people when you take their freedom away should not be a concentration camp torture chamber. And it certainly shouldn't be a place that incubates virus and where absolutely no productive year is distributed to inmates. You've got inmates in there who wrote a bad check, and they're poor, or they're black, or they're brown, or they're immigrant, and they can't get out. And they wrote a bad check for $20 or $100 or $50. And this is what we do. And forget the cannabis, just all those people. And what, you're going to die from COVID because you're in prison, and we're not being responsible as a country to the people we're taking freedom away from. So we've tried to help. You know, the Bureau of Prisons is an enormously difficult organization to affect change with, but we have been able to get some masks in there. We have a petition on our website to force them to release people, nonviolent cannabis prisoners, and a whole bunch of other prisoners, the likes of which I've just mentioned. Should not be in prison right now. A lot of these folks have the ability to be on home release. Some of the folks don't have homes anymore because they got locked up and removed from them. So, you know, we can't just throw them out on the street after. That's not a good place for the virus either. So, you know, a holistic approach is what is required when something like this happens. And we just don't have that holistic practice in our caring for even mainstream society under a pandemic is not doing a very good job right now with our strategy and our planning and our mitigating of this, let alone inside a prison. So, wow, it couldn't be a more urgent situation. We've lost people. People have died from COVID. We've also released some people. So it's a complex, ever-changing situation. You know, we have this governor in Michigan, Governor Whitmer. You can go, Michael Thompson is serving life in prison. He's got a clemency petition on her desk. The prosecutor has endorsed the clemency petition. All she has to do is sign it. She had the nerve to march with the hash bash, give a speech at the hash bash and talk about the cannabis industry, and she's friends and all that. Well, come on, man, sign Michael's petition. He's already done 26 years for 3 pounds a week.
Wow. And you know, you kind of breezed through this early on, and you mentioned that you've worked with Dennis Perone, you worked with Brownie Mary. I believe that Harborside had over 100,000 patients. I mean, activism has been in your blood. What advice do you have for people who feel like, look, I don't know that my voice is not the loudest in the room, or I don't have the most influence in this circle. What do I have to contribute? What would be your answer to them?
It's a great question, and a lot of folks have asked me that. So the way it works, the way activism works, is it starts with your immediate people in your immediate circle and your immediate surroundings, and making the decision that you're going to talk about these things to those people in your immediate circle and your immediate surroundings. Oftentimes, that is the riskiest step for people to take. Once you can talk about these things in an open way, right? In a way where we maintain equilibrium and we can disagree agreeably, and be calm and just be Americans, man, and share knowledge and information and opinion. That's the first step on the road of activism. Once you decide to do that, and I remember being a teenager having all these debates with my dad and my stepmother, and my stepmother's from Orange County, and she was a conservative Republican, very conservative lady. And, you know, we'd have these discussions around the dinner table when I was 14, 15, and it was great training, you know, it was great training, all those discussions. That's activism. By the time those folks, you know, I started taking care of my stepmother and my father, they had become progressive liberal people. It took 30 years or whatever, but, you know, then you work your way out. Once you have the courage to have those conversations and you start to affect the minds, if not the hearts, of the people in your immediate surrounding, then you can start taking the next step of risk. And that's maybe in your workplace, you know, maybe, you know, you start activating in a place where, you know, you actually earn your living from. That can be a risky place to do activism because your boss might not like it. It could threaten you, but that is also a very potent place to do activism, because sometimes the boss is just as afraid to show their progressive roots as you are. And once you accept that, you know, once you make that gesture, you see that the boss is aligned, and wow, maybe we can actually leverage this company and do something here. And you'd be surprised how that works. And then you engage with an organization like LPP. You know, there's so many different ways. If you just want to write a letter to a prisoner, very simple thing, just you and a prisoner. Nothing flashy. There's no press release. No one's going to take a picture of you. You don't have to get on social media. But it has huge impact when somebody's in prison. They get a letter from a stranger that says, hey, I just wanted to reach out and say hi and say, I'm thinking out about you. You got people out here rooting for you, trying to get you out. What that does to somebody's spirits who's locked up in an institution like an American prison is just phenomenal. And it's an act of activism. You're communing. You are creating consensus. You're creating a conversation. That person's going to get out someday. That person's going to vote. You're going to vote. You'll influence each other. So there's so many different ways to plug in these days. And then if you want to do things more public on social media and things like that, there's a million ways to do that too, that we've all been sort of, and sometimes in good ways and sometimes in complicated ways, been participating in, you know, the last week or so, and finding our way. And you know, above all, we've had these moments, you know, we've had these moments throughout my whole adult life, my whole living life, where something occurred like Rodney King, or something occurred like George Floyd, these moments are very important. And we do need to, and even if they seem wasted, they do have domino and ripple effects over time. I don't think we should waste this one. I think we should pounce on it and build on this momentum. And already LPP, we have seen just in the last 48 hours over $100,000 of donations from big cannabis companies. We've got Leafly and MJ Biz Daily and PAX and, you know, Ocean Grown Extracts, and, you know, the list is too long to mention. Then small companies like Two Joints and Her Highness, and, you know, all kinds of folks in between. So people are stepping up. People are feeling it in their guts right now in our community, and not just LPP. You know, groups like Project Zero is trying to reform police. They're amazing. They have a 10-point plan, and they're amazing. You know, they've already figured it out. We just go do it. You know, it's, you know, so I'm optimistic when I see things like that out there. The solutions are there. We just got to support them. Absolutely.
And you know, I've dominated your time. We want to open the floor and give everybody who's been patiently listening and waiting and tuning in an opportunity to pick your brain a little bit too. So I'll ask y'all to step up. Who's got a question for Andrew?
I got a question. First of all, Andrew, thanks for speaking with us. I really appreciate your insights, and I think that was a really inspiring overview that you gave. As a younger person in the cannabis industry, I've kind of struggled personally with the idea that I've come in and stood on the shoulders of giants, so to speak, where I didn't really do any true activism work. I got my first green card when I was 25 years old. So I felt that even though I've, my entire career path really tried to work towards an equitable place, I think it's become clear to me that there's more that I need to do. So what would you say the most important thing for young people, specifically like me? What's the most powerful way that I can use my voice specifically as a young individual?
Well, it's a great question. First, don't feel bad in any way, shape, or form about any kind of activism that you've had to do or not do. It's a bummer that we've had to do this activism. We should have never had to do it in the first place. So it's a sign of progress. Feel good, not bad. But clearly we have a lot more progress to do. I'm really impressed with the generations coming up now. My brother calls them the smartest generations because just the way folks can communicate and connect with each other. That was something we always struggled with in our generations. We had a really hard time communicating with each other because we couldn't access the mainstream media, and the alternative press, was sporadic and didn't have good distribution. Now, the distribution is there and the connectivity is there, and it's so I think that's one thing that younger folks are already doing and teaching folks like me how to communicate in that way in better ways. I think, starting having organizations that are generational specific, there's a bunch of them now, Black Lives Matter being one of them. So I'm happy to see those organizations being formed. I do think it's important to watch out for fragmentation. One of the things that happened to our generations is every time a group got frustrated, they splinter and break off from each other, and someone would go start their own group, and then all of a sudden you have 50 groups all doing the same thing, and and you have fragmentation. So I would guard against that. And just raise hell and demand change. The earlier you are in your career and sort of in your activism is the time to be in the streets. It's the time to get attention from the more mainstream folks, because there's a lot of things that disappointed me about Barack Obama, but he wrote recently something really that I thought was powerful, and that is, we got to be in the streets, and it's good to be in the streets, and young people need to be in the streets, because that's what sends the message to older people. You tend to get power as you get older, is political power, right? Is the way it works, unfortunately, in this country. It's always been a frustration for me. It always pissed me off that when I was a younger person, I was always frustrated that the adults and the older people never seem to listen and care or understand or even try. And I was just, well, why don't we have more power? You got to get it. You got to go get the power. And fight the power. So being in the streets, I think, is really important. But once we make progress in the streets, it's important that we're good political operatives, not just good activists, because otherwise we'll fall into this trap of the circle firing squad, and we'll make the perfect the enemy of the good every single time. And that's not how progress is made. So that those are the 1-2 punch. And I think that the younger generations have a lot more sophistication and are going to be able to pivot between those two worlds. The world of an activist is a little different than the world of an operative. You know, here in California and Washington, I'm trying to fix Prop 64. You all are probably trying to fix your legalization framework and tax structure. For a few years, we've been trying to fix it in California. We've gotten nowhere. The mainstream politicians have not helped us. Democrats have not helped us. We haven't been able to pass any of the bills to fix it. We haven't really been effective political operatives yet. We're still learning how to do that. We don't have a lot of power. We don't have a lot of money in the pay-to-play system. Our industry doesn't have a big voice yet. It could if we got our political act together a little bit more. Again, that fragmentation I talked about is plaguing us, but you know, that's what we got to get good at now. Because there's a lot of folks that are getting locked out of the legal system, and here in California, you know, there's more California legal cannabis wealth in Canada right now than there is in California, for crying out loud.
That won't
So
last.
those are some of the things. I hope I answered your question. It's really hard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to support your organization. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Maria. I have a question. You know, regarding the Prisoner Prosperity Program, what do you see a role of, say, community colleges to support or to advocate or to, you know, be a part of in terms of that, of helping prisoners once they are released?
Well, that's a great question. And you know, some things that come to mind: tuition-free classes for prisoners, you know, and I don't know, that makes sense to me. You extend that to anyone who's done their time, regardless of the crime. I mean, if you've done your time and you're out and you're trying to reintegrate into society and train yourself, doesn't it make sense to pay for that as a taxpayer rather than pay for the recidivism back into the jail? So that's one thing they could do. You know, community colleges are kind of like the cannabis community, don't have a huge amount of political power. But I'd love to see whatever power they do have to lobby, you know, leaders to participate in social justice more. You know, the ultimately prosecutors, ultimately parole boards, ultimately lawyers, ultimately people like that are the ones that are going to change it. That's how the system works on the local level. And, you know, until our people get into those positions, till progressive social justice people become the prosecutors, you know, we're gonna be activists, not operatives. I want us to be operatives, not activists. And that's really the future, the next generations. You get to be operatives, not activists. I had to be an activist. What a bummer. It's so much more fun to be an operative, because that means you're closer to power.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Maria. Who else has got a question? I know we got some inquisitive folks on the call. I know for a fact.
Fire away. I'm ready to go.
Andrew, this is Kristin from the Cannabis Alliance. How can we, as a trade association, be more involved, get into the pipeline, help people avoid, you know, get them out, and then get the conversation going with our own? I mean, we have the opportunity to not be activists, but to move towards being operatives. So how can we as a cannabis trade association progress this idea?
Great question. Trade associations are operatives because now we have trade associations, which is very new. For decades, we've had activist organizations, but the trade associations are new. So congratulations for doing that. LPP has two main programs for cannabis companies. One is for retailers and anyone who uses a POS system to sell weed to the consumer. And that's called the Roll It Up for Freedom program. And if your business we're just starting to get it in digital form on the POS systems, but essentially it's a little bucket, a change bucket you put at the register, and the sales associate or bud tender says, would you like to take the change I'm giving you today for your cannabis purchase and roll it up for freedom to Last Prisoner Project? And then they drop it into the bucket if the customer says, yes, I would like to roll it up for freedom. And you'd be surprised how much, because cannabis customers, are generous people. In my experience running Harborside, those little buckets, we've had those buckets on our counter for 13 years, all kinds of different organizations, both cannabis activists and not, cancer and Alzheimer's and epilepsy and all kinds of things we've had on there. And we've raised so much money on the counter. I mean, every time I send a check to one of those groups, it's for $5,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 from having it on the counter. So that's one program. And then the other program we have is for brands, manufacturers, growers, and that's called, and that's a program called, it's not Roll It Up for Freedom, Partners for Freedom. And for in exchange for a monthly donation, and it depends on what size company you are and what level you want to participate in, you get a logo that we send you that you can put on your packaging. So your community of customers knows that this company supports LPP. And what a trade association can do is, wow, you have all these members that that can be in one of these two programs. We would love to be able to present ourselves to all of them through your funnel. And get people signed up for those programs. Those programs are the best ways for people to help us, because they activate the customer, and they also activate employees and staffs and whole teams of organizations for the Partners for Freedom. And it's something people can feel good about.
I am giving you my email address so we can talk about having you present to us.
Yes, and you can reach me at andrew@andrewdeangelo.com, everybody. Easy peasy, and I'm on LinkedIn. I'm everywhere. So easy to find. Reach out. I'm very, very easy to get a hold of.
Fantastic. Who's up? Who's got a question? I know y'all aren't shy people. Let me ask you this, Andrew. You talked at one point about many skills that are needed in this industry, to help this industry to thrive, and don't be shy if you don't necessarily have a cannabis background. The same, I imagine, goes as well for Last Prisoner Project. Even if somebody's not an attorney, or if I don't own a dispensary, like you said, I could start with letter writing. There are other skills I could probably contribute to the organization, correct?
Oh my goodness. If you're a lawyer, we need lots of lawyers. These clemency petitions and the expungement, all of those is lots of different types of legal work. Even if you're not a quote unquote criminal or attorney, there's so much you can do to plug in. If you are a CPA, you have clients that can be part of one of those two programs I've just mentioned. And you can, as the trade association is going to do for us, act as a funnel to activate all of your clients for us. And even your own little company can participate in our Partners for Freedom program. Even if you don't have a product to put the logo on, you can put it on your website. You can put it on your business card. And we'll do the same on our website. There's I can't really think of a job that anyone would have that they could not somehow use those skills to help Last Prisoner Project. There's just so many different ways. If you go to our website, lastprisonproject.org/get involved, I think is the slash URL. It's either get involved or take action or something like that. We have a whole list of different ways that people with different skills can plug in. We try to make it super easy. I mean, we for people to just click through and then boom, you've sent a letter of support to a governor or to somebody and very quickly, or signed a petition or what have you.
And thank you. I did just post that link in the chat, so anybody who would like to grab that, it's there and available for you. Andrew, boy, this has been a thrill. You know, we talk about standing on the shoulders of giants, and you've been there long before many people. And thanks for helping lay the groundwork along with those other giants that you've worked with. This has been a thrill.
Well, it's been great to be with Cannabis Science and Saturday Sesh today, and thank you everybody for tuning in. And it was a great conversation. And thank you for supporting LPP. We so appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we want to remind everybody on the call that Academy of Cannabis Science is a family-owned operation. We are in registration now, so if you find yourself needing to continue to take courses to keep your consultant certification active, or you just want to learn more about the cannabis industry, we got you at academyofcannabisscience.com. And we're grateful. Y'all are a super family. During these times, please keep yourself safe. Reach out to those people you love, people of color and otherwise. Start small fires with conversation, and let's be quick not to damn people for misbehavior or your older relatives who might not be in the know, but take time to listen. And because if we shut people out, then they don't have an opportunity to learn. Let's give people a break, but not so much a break that they continue to perpetuate stuff we need to fix. So we love you. Show the love that cannabis is. Thank y'all for joining us. Thanks again, Andrew. Y'all have a great Saturday afternoon.